We were down to lecture 8.1, that is week 8, I'm sorry, 8.3, lecture 3, and it's the last lecture. Wow. It has all gone so quickly. These two chapters in Grudius that we're going to look at, chapters 25 and 26, deal with some stuff that we've already covered in dealing with the Oliphant book, and so some of this is not new to us in this course, even though it's somewhat different from the way that Oliphant would treat, especially chapter 25. I've noticed in the comments that were generated on the forum, some of you were pointing out the difference between a theocentric and a Christocentric understanding of apologetics, and I think that's a good assessment. We definitely do have a theocentric approach right here. Grudius's basic apologetic is to take care of the theistic issue first, and then to take care of the Christ issue once we've settled the theistic issue. Now, it's not as though the book is separated chapter-wise like that, but that really is probably a good assessment of the way he thinks about dealing with apologetics issues. And Oliphant, of course, doesn't. And so there will be that debate going on for a long time, as long as the Lord tarries, between people who have a differing approach. We've talked a little bit about a variety of different approaches to apologetics from the very beginning of this course, but that certainly is one of the deep and intransigent differences between different styles of apologetics. So he formulates the problem of evil, nothing new, page 616. He shows how Epicurus dealt with this issue back in Greek philosophy. It's an old question, not a new one. And then beginning on 617, he gives 5 unsatisfactory answers to the problem of evil, or to evil. Atheism is the first, and he attempts to show that ultimately there's not, it's hard to find a category for evil in atheism, because all that happens is all that happens. I think that's a good discussion. Number 2 on 619, a finite God. Today we would think of, well, we think of the book that he mentions here by Rabbi Kushner, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. I happen to have been around in some of my early years of ministry when this book became quite popular. So it lists 1981 right here in the footnote, and it caused quite a stir, both among Jewish theologians and among Christian theologians as well. Today, we deal more as Christians with something called process theology, which is a finite God theology, and another near finite God theology that is called open theism. And we don't have a lot of discussion of open theism in this book, but that would be a finite God theology. Even though open theists say their God is not finite, he certainly is finite in the limitation of his knowledge. The third, God is not omnibenevolent, and here he talks about those who essentially say, well, if there's a God, then he's the devil. Then the fourth example on 620, the non-existence of evil. And he mentions that this takes place certainly within Zen and other forms of pantheism, but also within the sort of semi-Christian circle of fellowships. Christian Science would argue that there is no such thing as evil. Evil is just an illusion. It shows that Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science, had influence from Eastern faith. We know she did. She was involved in reading some of the Hindu and Buddhist literature of the time when she was a younger woman. And then karma and reincarnation, and talks about the different forms of karma as understood in Hinduism and also in Buddhism. And I've always found it interesting that karma is kind of a cool concept for Westerners. John Lennon many years ago made a record of a song called Instant Karma. Some years later, Boy George, I do remember Boy George, put out a song called Karma Chameleon. And so if you go back and look at the New Age experimentations that were taking place in the 80s with people like a variety of actors and actresses, think of Shirley MacLaine, for instance, they all kind of thought that karma was cool. But if you're a Hindu or a Buddhist, then you don't think that karma is cool. All right. Then he gets into on page 625 what I would call the most intransigent of all theological problems, and that is the origin of evil. Where does it come from? And we can gesture at this. We can certainly point out some things that are found in Scripture. At the end of the day, we're still left with a certain amount of uncertainty as to why God would do this. But obviously, some sort of greater good God saw in allowing for evil to come into the world. And of course, he did not bring it himself. He allowed human beings to bring evil into the world. How do we then deal with the whole question of evil? And that's where he gives us a number of pages of content. Page 632, you'll find his answer, which is different than Oliphant's, because what Grudius wants to argue is something called free will here, and not exactly free will in the way that some kind of evangelistic preacher might use the term, but the fact that Augustine argued that Adam was created with a free will, and so he deals with the issues related to that. And I'm not sure that he does as great of a job with this as he could. He doesn't ever really take the presuppositionalist or covenantal view too seriously in all of this. He has a section on the greater good defense, 637 and following, and shows how that certainly is found in Scripture. There's no doubt that it's there. Whether that's the last word, of course, is another question. The cross and resurrection, he uses these as an example. If God would bring his own Son to the point of suffering for us, then evil can have a redemptive purpose at the end of the day. And I think that, again, as far as sort of general hermeneutical discussions go, hermeneutical apologetical discussions go, this is it's helpful. It covers the bases. Then he talks in the final chapter about taking it to the streets. He quotes from Romans 12, 1 and 2, one of my favorite passages, and talks about how important it is for us as Christian people to take it to the streets, to now that we've learned things about apologetics, actually to be able to apply those and to work them out in terms of a whole apologetic methodology. So hopefully you've been helped by this book. It's a lot here. We didn't read every chapter, as you know. But it's a good collection of stuff to have all in one place that you can go to. We will have, of course, a final coming up next at the end of week 8, April 22nd. We'll probably put the final up on Thursday. We'll leave it up till Monday. And then you have several other assignments, written assignments, to turn in your own apologetic approach to apologetics. And then either the book review of Frame or the book or the film analysis of the God Is Not Dead 2 film, and other assignments that are there. Those are the only two things that you'll be turning in that haven't been sort of part of the whole process up until this point. Hope that you have had some good learning experiences through this class. Even though I took a while to get up to speed on the OBU platform, the online platform, is very different from anything I've been used to before. But for those of you who will be in the class this next term, we should hit the ground running. God bless. Email me if you have any questions. Thank you.